Hello again, everyone. Edwin Learnard back once again. In this YouTube astrological segment, I'm going to be talking about transit Saturn conjunct the natal ascendant. Well, the first thing about this transit is that when someone experiences it, there might be a little more of a propensity to lose weight during this time. If this is in the years when somebody is very young, they're in school, they're, say, grade school, middle school, high school, they're in their growing years, well, the growth might be a little bit limited during this time. But once the transit, well, after the transit leaves, then they might start growing a little bit more after that period. But now there can be trying to, and somebody's trying to gain weight during this period, there can be some difficulty in doing so as well. This also could be resurfacing perhaps of a mentor, the person's father, or an older person, because once transiting Saturn is making a conjunction to the natal ascendant, it is on its way out of the 12th house and into the first house. So this is where you might see that resurfacing of that person that may be the father, might be an older person, might be a mentor, might be some authority figure maybe you hadn't seen in some time, and then this is where you might be able to rekindle those old ties, perhaps in some cases. Now, during this transit, one may come across as a little bit more melancholy, a little bit more despondent, and this also is about a period where you might, especially if you're very young, you can come across as a little bit more older and more mature than your years would indicate. I have this aspect natally. And when I was like very young, when I was in school, a lot of people felt, and even in my 20s, a lot of people thought I was older and before my time. Not so much in my appearance, but because of my attitude. And I have a very stern and serious disposition very often. And this is a case where if you have this transit, it will be very noticeable to others, especially if, say, you have a more effervescent and livelier rising sign, or I should say an effervescent or lively or vivacious rising sign such as Gemini or Sagittarius. People will know this difference really like in a heartbeat when they see this in your demeanor. If you have a rising sign like mine that's Taurus, or say Capricorn, that's a little bit more stoic, a little more serious, the difference won't be as noticeable, but it still could be somewhat noticeable to others. Now, also too, this could be a period where you might be feeling a little bit despondent or downcast regarding your physical body and your appearance, perhaps. And on the positive side, you may project a more consistent nature during this time, more stable nature. The thing too about this is Saturn is about responsibility, and the first house, of course, the ascendant, is about our physical body. So this could be a time where one might pay a little more attention to the physical body and take that responsibility towards it. And a lot could depend on the sign Saturn is in. Say if Saturn is in Gemini, and especially if your rising sign is the same sign, in most cases in transits it will be. Now, if you have Gemini rising and say you have transit Saturn in Gemini making a conjunction to the Gemini ascendant, well, there might be some difficulties, restrictions connected with the arms, and this is a time, like say, for example, a sprained arm, or even with the hands, a carpal tunnel syndrome, something that body part that corresponds with the zodiac sign Gemini, and it may be time to take responsibility for it. If it's in Sagittarius, it might be something connected with the thighs. Could be one example. I believe the hamstrings as well are associated with Sagittarius. So something Sagittarius related. If you had Saturn transit Saturn making a conjunction to your natal Sagittarius rising. Now, the thing about this too is that when you look at when you have this transit, keep in mind what's happening is it's on its way out of the 12th house and into the first house. When Saturn is transiting the 12th house, okay, what's happening is it's a very introverted and introspective period for one person. It might be a time where one shows a lot of responsibility in industry, even toward people that are less fortunate than they are, such as the oppressed, the impoverished, or homeless. But when you have this transit on its way out of the first and in a separating aspect will be, out of the 12th, and when what happens is when the transit is, what happens is when you have the transiting Saturn making a conjunction to your natal ascendant, it starts on its way out of the first house when it makes the applying aspect to the ascendant, but when it makes a separating aspect to the ascendant, it is on its way out and it goes into the first house. And it's more about, at that time, it's a little bit more self-centered, egocentric. It's about taking care, being responsible to your appearance, to your physical body, to your own personal needs. You've done certain things perhaps prior to this that are for others, maybe those are less fortunate, and then it's more about taking care of yourself when that happens. And keep in mind too that it's also, this could be a time when you have this conjunction, as I stated before, you might look a little bit more disconsolate, a little bit sadder, and seeing that, and you might be even seeing some of the negative sides of things, a little bit more pessimistic, what you're projecting outwardly. But at the same time, it's important to look at contraindicators in terms of transits. Let's say you have transit Jupiter making a sextile or trine to your natal moon or your ascendant or even your sun sign. The thing is, let's say you have transit Jupiter making a sextile or trine to your natal sun. You might be feeling a little bit more ebullient inside and more expansive and optimistic on the inside, because of course the sun represents our true self. But if you're having transit Saturn making a conjunction to your natal ascendant, outwardly you're going to be projecting a little bit more serious and stern disposition as far as your outer demeanor and characteristics go. But at least you might be feeling a little bit better inside in that example as opposed to what you're projecting outwardly. Well, anyway, people, that'll conclude this YouTube astrological segment for transit Saturn conjunct the natal ascendant. And stay tuned next time, where I'm going to be talking about astrology and appearance, part 2. I did an astrology video about astrology and appearance some time ago, but in the second video I'm going to talk a little bit about what I spoke of in the first video on astrology and appearance and add some things that may not have been in that first video to it. So I'll elaborate and expound a little more on astrology and appearance. 2 things I want to get with you on before I head out. Firstly, the stars may impel but do not compel. And secondly, never isolate any single astrological element, aspect, planetary placement, position, configuration, influence, or what have you, and make an analysis of a person, astrologically speaking, based on this alone, because astrologically speaking, the person is the sum of all their components in their natal chart and not just one. Until next time, people, stay well.